I know that the story I'm gonna tell you right now is really messed up. Stuff like this is far from normal, and both my parents and I are well aware of how terrible it all might sound. But this still happened. So it all started when I met a guy on Instagram. He liked some of my pictures and pretty soon DM'd me about a book I had mentioned in one of my posts. Talking to me about literature is the quick way to winning over my heart. I know this sounds funny, but it's true. So I replied and we started talking. His name was Sean. He was about my age. And he was cute. I just have to mention, there was no flirting coming from him throughout the whole story. He was just being nice. I was dropping hints, but he did not respond. It got me annoyed at the time, but now I feel relieved. Anyway, I had been telling him stuff about school, about my friends, about my family, just stuff I was up to. I was trying to keep it cute and smart. And here's what was going on between my parents and I at the time. You see, my family never really understood the concept of personal space. My parents always said that there should be no secrets in our family, that we should share everything, and that we should trust each other more than we trust anybody else. And sometimes in my life, this approach has helped me a lot. I always found support and comfort there. And I did not know it could be any other way either, since it's always been like this. But everything changed when I turned 14. I was growing up, and most of all, I felt a huge need for personal space. I guess many of you might be able to relate to that. It was not about doing something behind closed doors. It was more about the feeling, the psychological space, I guess. I started to not share as much with my parents. And the most basic example, I started to close the door to my room, which was open 24/7 throughout my childhood. My parents would walk by or come in, and I had no problem with that. Until now. And my parents did not understand. We had multiple conversations about it. Not really fights, but these talks were not pleasant. I explained to them that I needed personal space, but they acted like these two words didn't exist in the English language. Phew, sorry, I'm getting off track. This has been bothering me for a long time already. Anyway, Sean and I started texting each other. He wouldn't reply immediately like most of my friends do. Sometimes it would take him hours. But I didn't care. He seemed so much like me. Everything he said was so accurate, like he knew exactly what to say to win my trust. I didn't even notice the moment I started telling him more about my life, since it usually takes me way more time to get close with someone. So it was going perfectly. He was living in another town, and we never talked about meeting in real life, but I started to think about it constantly. And I know how crazy it sounds, but all of this happened within a week. Then he disappeared. Yeah, you heard that right. He just stopped texting me. He vanished. I was devastated. Am I that ugly and boring that it's just impossible to talk to me for more than a few days? I didn't see this coming at all. He didn't ever seem disappointed. The more I thought about it, the more complicated it got. I had never felt so bad in my life. I checked his account every day, but nothing was going on there. No new pictures, no stories, just nothing. And the people who tried really hard to get me out of this were my parents. They didn't force me to go to school, and they were so caring and tried to distract me. One day, both of them took the day off just for us to drive to the beach, which is not too far away from our town, and spend the day together. All day I thought about how lucky I was to have parents like this. A little later, after some fresh air, I did feel a little better, so I decided to investigate. He only had a handful of followers, and this was the first time I had checked on who these people were. And they were just some spam accounts. And I have to mention that he only had a few pictures on his account. And on second thought, they were pretty generic. Like a picture of a sunset, the book he texted me about. Not much, really. And don't judge me, but I didn't question John's existence because when we talked, he sounded so real. These discoveries did not make me happier. Even if it was not about me, what kind of evil person would do something like that? I was drowning in my thoughts about it, but pretty soon, everything became clear. That same day, my dad came home with a present. It was a very rare record player that I wanted for a very long time. This was the moment that I finally felt happy, and I spent the whole evening in my room listening to music. We already had a few old ones that had been broken a long time ago, and this one was so expensive that I had not even thought about telling my parents I wanted it. It was that thought that struck me. There were hundreds of record players out there, and my dad brought me exactly the one I dreamt of. Well, the only person who I sent the link to was Sean. The whole puzzle seemed to fall into place. I did not have any other evidence, but the mere thought of it was so shocking I got hysterical. I rushed to my parents' bedroom in tears, screaming. I woke them up and demanded an explanation. They listened to me sleepily. My mom started saying that it was just a coincidence that could easily happen. And my dad covered his face with his hands and screamed that it was all them. Well, this was going to be a long night. I started screaming that they were sick and that I didn't want to be their daughter anymore. They were just miserable. At one moment, I felt so exhausted that I just sat down on the floor and covered my face in my hands. That was when they started talking. So the story was that when my approach to personal space had changed, they panicked. They couldn't understand what was going on, so they imagined the worst. Like there was something I needed to hide, something terrible, of course. And I still can't believe it, but they had this plan. Creating a fake account and texting me on behalf of another teenager. You know the rest. Over that week, they continued to feel worse and worse. They felt ashamed and disgusted. As my dad told me later, they didn't think it would be that terrible when they started it. So the only way out that they could think of was to stop texting and disappear. And then, when they saw how bad I felt, they tried to correct their own mistakes, but it didn't get better. The record player was an act of desperation. Dad did not know it was so hard to find, so he didn't assume that it would be that easy to guess. After I found all of this out, I did not speak to them for several days. I would just come home to sleep while I was looking for moving options. But after all, they were really sorry and they realized pretty quickly that it was a mistake. And all of us make mistakes. I think this story changed their view on a lot of things, and now we are fine. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If any weird fake account stories ever happened to you, please share them in the comments.